Alrighty, we are doing it again, again.
I don't think that's enough agains.
Yeah, probably missing a good like freaking 20 agains in there, but
Oh well. We'll have to make do.
yeah, we do what we can. All right, we got anything to jibber jabber about before we talk about what everybody really listens for?
No, I have exclusively played not Netrunner card games, so I have no new Netrunner news.
Yeah, I have not played any games, let alone Netrunner. So
That's because you live a boring, sad life, and this is the only thing that gives it meaning.
yes, this is true. So that's why we're here. Um, well, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it.
Might as well. We've got some juicy cards. You want to start this one?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we should say beforehand that I don't know if we made any to do about it at the end of the last episode, but we did finish the last data pack, being what lies ahead. So we are now moving into the second data pack of the Genesis cycle, being trace amounts.
Yeah, turns out data packs are smaller than the core set.
Yeah, so we can actually get through these in less than 2 years, or at least hopefully.
We'll see. I might decide to take another 6 month sabbatical.
Yeah, at the very least, we got one data pack under our belt in less than 2 years. So, but with that, we can now talk about the cards that are in this second data pack, trace amounts.
Wow, what an intro.
All right. Well, anyway, you go ahead and read this card.
All right, first off, we have an Anarch event, Vamp. It has the subtypes Run and Sabotage. It is 0 credits to play, and it reads Make a run on HQ. If successful, instead of accessing cards, you may pay X credits to force the Corp to lose up to X credits, then take one tag. And it is 2 influence. Okay, Aaron, the obvious comparison card for this one is Account Siphon. This is obviously not Account Siphon. Account Siphon also costs 0, but you get 2 tags, and instead of paying to make the corp lose money, you the corp just loses up to 5 credits, and you get twice that amount of money. So why is Vamp so much worse? And is it sufficiently worse that it's just garbage?
Well, what's interesting is that the designers of the game really just came out first card of trace amounts asking, "What if account siphon but balanced?"
You don't think
Um,
it's balanced to have a 15 credit swing on one click?
no, and I think we've had a 40-minute conversation about that quite early in this show. But really, that's what I kind of look at Vamp as is what account siphon probably just should have been. Because here's the thing: is that Vamp is good. I would say in a vacuum, but the problem is that it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It obviously exists alongside account siphon, which, as it stands, does the same thing, but way better
Yeah,
in
it
in
makes
in
you
most
rich
certain things.
instead of
Yeah,
poor.
it makes you rich instead of poor. Vamp, you make both yourself and the corp poor. Though Vamp kind of puts you in an interesting spot where you can, suck any amount of credits from the corp. The one kind of saving grace, so to speak, about account siphon is that it is at the very least limited to stealing 5 credits from the corporation. Though obviously it is much better in the sense that it actually steals those credits and then some. In that you as the runner get them. Vamp very different. You can make the corp lose any amount of credits at the cost of you also losing that same amount of credits and then taking a tag.
Right. It's got obvious downsides, but it's being poor is not a symmetrical game between the runner and the corp, is it?
No, and it definitely was different and in a lot of different ways as the game went on. There were certain eras of the game where runners were rich, certain eras of the game where corps were rich, certain eras of the game where just everybody was rich all the time. And I think this sort of uh, got looked at a little more when we were in that third era, being the
Yeah,
everybody is rich all the time era, where this started to look a little nicer when the runner having 20 credits wasn't really outside the realm of possibility.
right. Yeah. It's it scales, right? Because if you and the corp both have 4 credits and you can get into HQ, then you can make them broke. But if you and the corp both have 25 credits, same idea. You can still make them dirt poor.
Yeah, Vamp does have some interesting flexibility in that regard. Now, granted, in a lot of these instances, just to be clear, account siphon is better. Like in that first scenario you mentioned, where you and the court both have 4 credits. Account siphon does what this does, but infinitely better.
Yep, yep. I would rather
However,
have 8 credits than 0.
in the 25 credit example, really all that'll do is make the corp have uh, 20 credits, and then you have 35 credits, which I mean is cool, but you
Less of
know,
a difference maker.
right? It's not going to be a night and day situation in the in the low numbers game. Uh, but Vamp is interesting, just because you can theoretically bankrupt a corp uh, from any point, so long as you're rich enough.
Yeah. So yeah, in that regard, I appreciate it. It does have the whole scaling thing. There's real stuff to it. What was the? I'm trying to remember it. There was an Anarch event that came out much later that just made the corporation like lose 5 credits or something.
Something mining accident.
Right.
I think it might have just
That,
been mining accident. I think that might just been what it was called.
yeah, that's the one. That didn't Vamp weirdly, although it came out at the beginning and that one came out towards the end of the game's life cycle. That one was like not enough to make the corp poor by the time it came out, and so it wasn't really effective. But Vamp, you
Yeah,
could still do it. I don't know if anybody did, but it was theoretically possible.
I want to say that I saw Vamp at least not regularly, perhaps not even semi regularly, but I saw it out and about. Um, you know, in some decks, as a one off kind of surprise.
Sure.
Um, because it is quite flexible, as I stated. Now, it certainly account siphon's still better, and you still saw that way out more often.
Yeah.
But one thing to keep in mind too is that Vamp does come out of Anarch, and so you do keep in mind that if you are wanting to include some economic denial without having to spend influence,
Hmm.
um, that is also kind of a point in its favor as well. Because keep in mind that account siphon is what, 4 influence.
Yes, very pricey.
Yes, quite a big chunk of your deck's influence. Where if you're running an Anarch deck, Vamp would not cost you any influence, or even if you wanted to for some reason flash like a Vamp into like a Shaper deck or something, it's only going to cost you 2 as opposed to account siphons 4.
Sure. And I've done that a few times where I did like a magnum opus Vamp sort of a deck.
Yeah, it's a
It
thing.
could work.
It's a thing. It's a thing that exists that you can do. How worthwhile was it really doing? Eh,
Middling. Middling is most of my how Vamp felt was that it worked kind of.
yeah, that's kind of where the best way to describe Vamp is that it kind of works. Like it's not great, but it kind of works.
It kind of works. Like the Kroger brand Todd Howard.
Yeah. Now, one interesting thing though is because it does say that you can pay X credits to force the corp to lose up to X credits. Are you allowed to use recurring credits that you can spend during the run on Vamp?
Yes, if it just says during the run, then yes.
See, that's a little bit of a sneaky little thing there.
True, true.
What are cards? What are some big name cards that you can spend during a run, and it doesn't have to be for programs. So that's the problem, I think, is that there's not a lot of those. Like cyber feeders and stuff that you have to spend those on programs.
Uh,
Toolbox just during a run, or is that with icebreakers?
I think it's icebreakers, or it might be programs in general. There's things like the what is it? The Ghost Branch? Not Ghost Branch. Crap, it's the card with the 3 stealth credits on it.
Oh
But you
yeah,
could use
Ghost
them for
Runner.
anything. Ghost Runner, that's the one.
Okay, so interesting little bit there. You know, there's some stuff you can do. All I'm saying, you know, there's some interesting little interactions to be had with the you know, paying the credits during the run.
Right.
You know, it doesn't just always have to be your own credits. Though who knows? That might not even be a worthwhile, you know, jank to try to explore. As is, though, is there anything that you would change about Vamp? I mean, do you think that it needed a buff, or do you think that where it kind of sits really is just a casualty of Account Siphon's existence?
I think it's more that one. I think Vamp would have been fine in most circumstances. Like whether Vamp is good or not is basically a factor of how Corp and Runner economies in the game surrounding Vamp balance against each other, and it just wasn't relevant because Account Siphon was basically always just better.
Yeah. Um, I think that, and I guess I could check and see if it's in the revised core set, but I feel like, you know, a do over on the core set, I feel like Vamp feels better to have in place of Account Siphon, in my
I would
humble
agree.
opinion.
I would agree with that.
Um, but yeah, no, I wouldn't change anything about Vamp. I think that Account Siphon is really the guilty party in all the issues that Vamp has.
Yeah, agreed. I think this card was fine. I wish I played a lot of Account Siphon, so this is going to be weird, but
Mhm.
I wish that Vamp had had its own chance to shine.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird, especially so soon after the core set, to kind of put a card like this that's just so clearly outclassed by Account Siphon. Yeah. Though I guess you could argue that, you know, we have spent a very good amount of time talking about cards that were just immediately trumped by cards already in the core set.
Yep. Yep.
I guess it is what it is. Anyway, let's talk about the flavor. Um, what's going on with the art? I always felt the art was kind of weird on this card.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what it's going for. Like, I obviously there's like credits flowing through the little streams or something, but I don't know. They could have done better.
Yeah, this doesn't really give me a vampire bloodsucker sort of vibe. This almost just sort of reminds me of like stuff like swimming through like a cyber ocean or something. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll read the flavor text though.
Do it.
Um, there was a certain Schadenfreude about throwing away your credits.
Now that part is true.
That is 100% true. Where do we put it? Where do we put our boy here?
I'm gonna give Vamp a 3.
I
It's the middle child.
Yeah, I agree. I think it deserves 3. Because I think standing on its own legs, I think it's a fine card. I think you could even say that it's a good card. But the problem was that they decided to print the cooler Vamp in the core set.
Right, they decided that we would never get to find out how cool it was or not.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. All right, I take this one, don't I?
You do. What do we got?
All right. Next, we got Liberated Account. It is an Anarch resource. It is 6 credits to install. And it reads, place 16 credits from the bank on Liberated Account when it is installed. When there are no credits left on Liberated Account, trash it. And you can spend a click to take 4 credits from Liberated Account. And it is 2 influence, again, out of the Anarch faction. Isaac,
You.
why was this a really needed, but not really awesome economic solution for Anarch?
Well, it was needed because Anarch was so poor. Anarch had nothing. Anarch was using Armitage code busting for so long, even after this got out, because they had no economy cards.
Yeah, this was one that Anarch got, and it was like, all right, I guess, but damn, still though.
Do I have to?
Yeah, it's like, really, this is what you're gonna make me use? I mean, I guess I don't have a choice. Um,
Yeah. It didn't feel good. But the six is the problem with this.
Yeah.
6 to install is expensive. You're basically taking a bunch of time to slap this down and then get value back out of it. It feels like it should be fast, but it kind of isn't.
Yeah, this is a master class in a card just having a huge initial hurdle that you need to overcome.
Yep.
Because that 6 to drop is crazy. Even Magnum Opus, which we had talked about a little bit ago, is only 5 to install. And then if you're playing Cade, it's only 4.
It's not the best. Like
Um,
it's good. It's good and we ran it. We used it a lot, but
yeah. Magnum Opus you got to keep forever.
yep.
This you got to pay 6 credits just so that you can then proceed to spend, 4 more clicks to get what ends up being like a decent, return.
Yeah, not my favorite.
Because is this still one of the cards that broke down to basically 2? Ultimately once you've used it up, you got 2 credits per click from it.
I think it wound up being a little bit better than that. Let's see. It's 5 credits and 5 clicks in total, 6 down. Yeah, no, that's what it works out to be. So it's basically just very slightly better than Armitage.
Yeah, and so because for the longest time that was the gold standard, and that was there was almost an obsession with that being the exchange rate was that 1 click equaled 2 credits.
Sure. And there are ways later on that you could like discount it a little bit with like a career day. Is that the one or
I
something?
believe so. There was
So there,
also wasn't there one where you could like host stuff on it and then install it? Like a
right.
dude selling
Yes.
cars on it or some shit.
Yes. We should do better research before we start these episodes. But yes. And so the 6 cost synergized well with those things, but then you're including more card slots around it. And what if you draw them out of order? And it's just not always the best.
Yeah. First off, I'm gonna say I resent your previous comment. I already did the 6 years of research that I need
Well,
when I was playing the game.
I guess you just have catastrophic brain damage then.
Um, but yeah, I do agree that that this card is pretty good, and and Anarch needed something. They needed some more money.
Very much so.
Um, because really all they had to work with, like you said, was Armitage and other factions. I mean, like we just said, Crims are running around with account siphon for free.
These criminals in your accounts.
I do. I feel like I did kind of see this on and off even way late in the game. Um, that people would still run this semi regularly. If you just needed kind of a solid econ card for whatever your Anarch deck was doing.
Yeah, kind of a gap filler.
Um, because I was kind of thinking, is this one of those econ cards where once something better finally came along, you just never saw it again? But I feel like even late in the game, there were still people throwing
Kind
liberated
of.
account in there.
In Max's heyday, I would like have one of these in a deck just in
Hmm.
case I needed to slap it down and power through it most of the way in one turn or something. But
Yeah,
yeah, it wasn't the best.
yeah, it certainly got worse as the game went on. And even when it came out, like I said, wasn't the most awesome card that that you ran, or that you
No,
had to run.
no, it was not.
But it got you money, and that's what you needed to do. Would you change anything about it? So we talked about the numbers, we talked about what it does, we talked about how it's kind of a pain in the ass to run. But all that being said, is it balanced? Is it fine?
I would maybe drop its install cost by 1. Just that feels like
Yeah,
a significant enough boost without being ridiculous.
because here's the thing, right? Is if you drop it to 5, then it at least puts you in the circumstance where first turn, if you need or want to, you can drop this and triple click it, which kind of gives you a pretty sweet, economic position. I mean, granted, it takes your whole starting turn, which might not be awesome,
For sure.
but as is, if you start in the game with this, you only start with 5 credits, so then you got to click for a credit, throw this down, and then only click it twice, and then you're up only net 2. I guess net 3 from where you started technically, but you see what I'm saying, right? It's the same.
Yeah,
You're at the same number of credits where if you had just clicked for credits 3 times and then played something else.
So it was It was okay, is what we're saying.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I think that's about it. I think the biggest change you can make with it is drop it up, and then I think that would put it into really solidly decent territory.
Wow. Amazingly decent.
Yeah, it would be incredibly decent at 5 minutes. You want to read the flavor text?
Sure. Ahem. It's easier to spend when it's not your money. Yeah, very easy to order robot poolside service in your cyber tanning bed that's outdoors. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, what is the deal with that chair? That is the most like needlessly cyber chair.
I'm really not too sure.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about the art, while we're talking about the art. I think it's all right. I mean, I guess it kind of conveys what it needs to. And cyborg lady just chilling by the pool has a
Just chilling.
has a robot arm.
I wish I had a robot arm.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? Still, somebody has to answer that for that chair, and I really hope that someday somebody does.
I'm afraid it probably won't happen though.
Maybe we can get Zalinger on the podcast, and we can ask him about the chair.
That'd be pretty dope. I'm down for that.
I'll put the work in. I'll get some feelers out. See if we can get him on. All right. Anyways, what do we rate Liberated account?
It's gonna get another 3 from me. This is some solid card that does some card stuff, but is not exciting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, do have to agree with you. For a second time, I would give it a 3 as well. Yeah, decent. Filled a needed role in the Anarch. You know, suite of cards for a while, and yeah, it just did what it did, and it did it good enough to get put in decks.
Yep. Yep. It went in decks.
Yeah, honestly, that's a huge bar to clear on the show. All right,
You're not wrong.
did it get put in decks? That's like one of the primary bars that a
Sure. I
card
mean,
needs to clear.
if we're just rating it based on like usability, this got went into so many more decks than Vamp. It's a better card than Vamp is, maybe, but Vamp was also competing in slots and purpose with account Siphon, which isn't fair.
Yeah, they're almost polar opposites of each other when you think about it, right? you
Yeah,
know,
kind of.
Vamp immediately, good card, in theory and also in practice, like even playing it, like it didn't do anything bad or poor or you would
Right.
really never regret running Vamp. However, it came out onto the scene in the shadow of a card that did what it did way better. When you look at Liberated Account, kind of the inverse situation. It came out, okay, not great, not exciting. It almost kind of, in some instances, almost kind of painful to slot it into your deck.
Right.
But you needed it. You needed money. There wasn't anything else. All you had was Armitage, and that wasn't enough. And so, you know, kind of interesting back to back that how they are kind of opposites of each other in that respect.
Yeah, the duality of 3-star cards.
Yep, the duality of a 3 card. All right, well, get this out of my face.
What's next?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I did the last one, but fine, I'll do this one. All right, so next up, we have Satellite Uplink. It is a criminal event. It has a play cost of 2. It has no subtypes, and it reads expose up to 2 cards, and it is 3 whole influence. All right, Aaron, I know another 3 influence 2 to play event called Inside Job. Uh, what kind of absolute brainlet would make this cost the same in influence and play cost as freaking Inside Job?
Yeah, hard to say. So one of the things is it's very evident that early on in the game that the designers certainly felt that certain things were going to be more impactful or stronger than they actually were. That can really be felt with Jinteki as a faction.
Yeah.
And it can also be felt with expose abilities. I think that it's really evident that the designers thought that exposing cards was going to be way bigger of a deal than it ever ended up being.
Yeah, it just it was not a thing, was it? It's like, okay, you get to look at cards. Who wants to pay money? And even more, who wants to pay deck slots to look at things?
Yeah, like you want to know when I want to look at things when I'm accessing them. That's when I'll look at them.
Right, when you can steal them, perhaps.
Yeah, I'll look at cards after I play Maker's Eye, and I'll look at 3 from R&D. That's when I'll look at cards.
Yeah, yep. Another that's two credits to play event. Only I'm making a run that's going to get me a look at 3 cards.
Yeah. One could argue that I'm exposing 3 cards from R&D, and then if they're agendas, I score them.
Wow, that seems like it might be better.
Yeah. And they really here's the thing is, and they tried to make expose a thing. If we ever get to it, a little console called Blackguard.
Boy, did they want that to be a thing. I wanted it to be a thing. It's a cool concept, but boy, we'll get to that one day. But whew,
Yeah,
nope.
the closest that it ever became to being a thing is, and interestingly enough, you can see her featured on this card's art, is that Leela Patel did have, what was a pretty powerful, effect that you could trigger off exposing, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
Wasn't it that when you scored an agenda, you could
No,
bounce something
that's not
back?
what it was. That's it. You could. It wasn't that you exposed it. You just added an unresed card
That's right,
back to
but
HQ.
her having exposed was useful in that instance because she.
Yeah, kind of, because you have a little more information to manipulate the board with. But did you really need it?
Yeah, as I was saying, she was the closest that expose ever became to kind of being useful, was with her ability. But even in that instance, you could not run a single expose card, and getting her ability would still be fine because it's just making the corpse spend more clicks.
Yep. Yep.
But Leela Patel, I would say she was the closest that expose ever got to ever being a thing. Was running an expose card or two out of her.
So anyway, this is a pile of trash.
Yeah, this card kind of sucks. So you expose 2 cards, which is like whoop-de-doo. I get to look at them, and then I know what they are. And here's the problem. And I don't know if we got into this when we talked about whatever the card that exposes things in the core set is. Infiltrate. What is it? Infiltration, and then there's the Crim card. I can't remember what it is. It is that if you're playing good Netrunner, chances are you are going to know a good amount of what is on the table anyways. Right?
Right. You're able to make educated guesses, or you're running and seeing things and you have an idea and you don't need to know exactly.
Yeah, like if I've made runs on R&D, if I've made runs on HQ, which, spoilers generally as a runner, that's kind of what you should be doing. You're going to already be seeing those cards prior to them, physically being played on the table. And so, via, context clues and, just being a savvy player, you're already going to have a good idea of what's on the table in front of you, even if it's not flipped up. And that's why expose is kind of so poopy, is because what's it going to tell me? It's going to be, okay, yeah, I was 90% sure that was a Victor 1, but now I know.
Whoopee.
Its best use case is against, like shell game, Jinteki type decks. But spoiler alert, those decks suck.
Yeah, not good.
Because you want to know how you play against shell game decks? Is you run central servers, which, spoilers, you were probably going to do that anyway.
And guess what wins you the game?
Yeah, guess what happens when you run central servers and steal agendas? You win.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is it counters a type of deck that sucks, and so by extension it sucks.
Yeah. So you want to read the flavor text on this pile of garbage?
Yeah, let me read this whole ass fucking paragraph of flavor text for this shit card. T minus 13 seconds. Leela had to work fast. She jacked in the mesa wire and activated the screen. 7 seconds. The internal SLD was still booting. 4 seconds. The interface flickered to life with an orange glow. 2 seconds. With a tap of a finger, she was in. I don't know what that has to do with being in space and exposing things, but
Well, you can look at things from space, you see.
that is fair. I guess the flavor is that she is uplinking into the satellite.
I guess. You might say she's making a run on space.
She is making a run on space itself. And what will she get for her troubles? She will get to see what 2 cards are on the table.
The remarkable thing is that it only cost her 2 credits to make a run in space.
Yeah, right. You could argue that, really, being the way the economy is kind of presented in this game, like you should be spending way more than 2 credits to get up into space and pressing buttons.
See, that's the cheapness of outsourcing your runner labor to India.
Nice. What do we rate this thing?
0.
See, I'm gonna do a reverse. I'm gonna do a Uno reverse because I was handing out zeros like crazy last time. I am gonna give this a 1. I almost gave it a 2. I'm not gonna lie, I was very close to giving it a 2. But I think 2 is simply too much. So I think Satellite on Blake is bad. Don't get me wrong, but for all that we said, it is not completely useless. What it asks of you is not unattainable.
Here's the thing, though. Even among exposed cards, it's not a good one.
I mean, fair. I mean, like Infiltration, at least if you don't want to expose something, you just get $2.
Right, or Deuce is Wild.
I mean, Deuce is Wild. You don't ever play that to expose anything. You just play that to draw a card and get 2 credits. But
true.
But to be fair, right? That one's super flexible in that if for some ungodly reason you really needed it to expose something, you could do that.
Right. Which feels like kind of the right place for expose if you were going to have it.
Yeah, and it's exactly why I mentioned that Infiltration is better because at least in that instance, you have it. But if you don't have anything you need to expose, you just get $2.
Totally valid.
But all that being said, I don't think that Satellite Uplink is so offensively bad that it deserves a 0.
Yeah.
How would we make it better, though?
How would we make it better? The problem with this card is with expose, so I don't know. Maybe if you gave it some of that flexibility, if it was expose, or if it was like gain 3 credits and expose up to 2 cards, and for every card you expose, gain 1 like credit less or something. I don't know. Give it some flexibility if expose isn't useful to you right now. And how often do you need to expose 2 cards? Like, this is so specialized.
What you could do is you could be like expose up to 2 cards, gain 1 credit for each exposed card that was not an agenda or something.
That could work. I don't hate that.
Something funny like that, where it's like, okay, if you use it to expose something, it turns out to be an agenda, then it still ended up costing you. But if you didn't reveal an agenda out of it, then you get your bucks back.
Yeah, I don't hate that. It's kind of reasonable.
Yeah, it's a little fun too. I don't think that I like interactions, that change depending on the board state or whatever. Cards that do different things depending on.
Yeah,
I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's got some interaction to it, and it makes a game of the game.
Anyway, that's what I would do. And that is now all that I ever want to say about Satellite Uplink.
And it's all you'll ever have to.
All right. Next, we have another contender for the champion of cards that I could have swore were in the core set. E3 feedback implants.
Oh boy.
Which is a criminal hardware with the mod subtype. It is 2 credits to install, and it reads, whenever you break a subroutine on a piece of ice, you may pay 1 credit to break 1 additional subroutine on that ice. And it is 2 influence, again, out of the criminal faction. So, Isaac. Why did nobody ever play this card until, like, way later when people realized that you can chain it off of non-icebreaker things?
Well, basically, because this isn't worth it if you're just... Alright, so criminal breakers, by default, are kind of bad.
Yes.
If you look at things like Peacock, where you're paying 2 credits for subroutine breaks and things like that, then it's like, okay, you're breaking multiple subroutines. That feels bad. What if I had a cheaper way to break the next subroutine? In comes E3 feedback implants. The problem is, nobody actually ran those bad breakers. They just imported better breakers because they're like, yeah, heck with this. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, would you rather run a bad criminal breaker and then E3 feedback implants, or would you rather run corroder?
Oh man, what a decision I have to contemplate now.
Yeah, but very interestingly, this is one of those cards that I would say, kind of slumbered, kind of laid in obscurity for a very long time, and then I think it had a decent uptick. Where when we got kind of weird breakers that broke things with like tokens and clicks and those sort of things, then
Yeah,
suddenly E3 feedback implants wasn't looking so bad.
right. Yeah,
Because this can extend the life of those cards that break using a finite resource.
yep. And getting past an Eli for a click and a credit feels a lot better than 2 clicks.
It sure does. Um, that's probably one of the more common ways that I saw E3 feedback implants used. Was that really this alone can get you a lot out of playing against Bioroids. You get a lot of value out of just this and 4 clicks, as far as being able to get into a server.
Yeah,
And then I'm remembering how David works correctly too. That's
yep,
another prime use for this. Is
absolutely.
really extends the life of a David.
Oh yeah, suddenly that Heimdall 2, which was going to eat your entire David, takes 1 David counter and 2 credits. Like, give me a break. Come on.
Yeah, like great use case for that. Um, Trying to think. Guess you could say it's probably not going to come up often, but the green Cerberus breaker that uses the tokens to break barrier subroutines. You're not going to run into it often, but it could save you tokens on that, depending on what you're
Yep.
running into. Um, just those sorts of things. E3 feedback implants is not good for its original use case of making the criminal breakers less poopy. Rather, what it did end up getting used for, at least semi regularly, was that you were running good breakers that used a finite resource to break and made those even better.
Yep. Yep. So it found a cool niche. It was seen regularly, but I don't think they intended it for the
Yeah,
use that it found.
yeah. And that's why it's one of those interesting cards where it's just like nobody ever played this card, nobody ever fucking heard of this card, and then suddenly, when there was enough uses for it, you were sitting across somebody at a tournament and they were, David E3ing, your shit, and you were crying about it.
Right. It was the dormant seed that finally found some fertile earth.
Yep. But as I said before, I do love a nice, underdog comeback story, and so I'll give it props for that.
Fair. Agreed.
So would you change anything about it? Knowing all that we know about the ways that it wasn't used and ended up getting used, is there anything wrong with it?
Honestly, no. Like, I like this card the way it is. I think at 2 credits, it's a good install place. I like that it's hardware. Um, yeah, I don't know what I would change.
Yeah, I agree. It's E3 feedback implants. He was ahead of his time. That was his only problem. He just showed up too early. He just showed up too early to the party, and so he had to chill for a while. But really, and to me, it's really interestingly, the card as it's printed, like, is kind of perfect, even though nobody used it for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of just now thinking in the direction of what if you gave it some other option, but no, no, this is good. It's a simple card with that had some interesting implications. Leave it alone.
Yeah. I think it's good. I think it's interesting. Like I said, it just showed up too early. So let's talk about some flavor here. I think you read this flavor text now.
All right, we have Cyber Solutions E3 line of implants trades strictly in muscle memory and autonomic. Geez, responses. Freeing the brain to focus entirely on cerebral tasks. I like it.
It types your fingers for you.
Yes. It's not at all creepy as it does so either.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting, though, the sort of implications of that, right? That it's like, okay, how much performance increase would you see, right, if you really literally didn't have to worry about the mechanical function of typing? Like, what
Right.
if just me thinking was all I had to do, and some implant would do all the typing and interfacing for me?
Right. It's macros for your brain.
Yeah, so kind of interesting. I find that pretty cool.
Agreed.
Um, Decent function to play, I guess I'd say.
Hmm.
Um, how do we feel about the art?
How do we feel about the art? I like it. I like what it's doing. I think the fingers look a little weird. Like the
Yeah.
proportions of hand to fingers, finger feel a little bit off, but I like what it's doing.
Well, what I'll say about the fingers is that the weird blue energy around them kind of messes with the perspective, and so it just kind of looks like he has like gimpy, bendy, like wilted fingers.
It does a bit.
And so I think if you took that off, like prior to that being added, they probably looked more normal. But just the blue, the mess of blue, sort of messes with that perspective, and so it just looks like he's just got like fucked up fingers.
Yep. Yep.
Other than that, though, I think it's fine. I think it communicates what it is in a fine way. All right, so what do we rate our boy E3 invention? Rest in peace.
It's getting a 4 for me. Like it's not a world-shattering card, but it's interesting, did cool things. I think it's well balanced. I think this is a solid I don't know, a good sports analogy.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. I don't know one either. Um, and being the sportsman, I guess I should, but uh, it's a nice yeah. I don't know. It's just good. It's not offensive, and it had a nice underdog story.
It just works.
It had a nice comeback. So I'm also going to give it a 4. By the way, I guess I should actually say that. All
Sounds
right.
right to me.
So with that, we will move on to the fifth and final card, as is customary around here.
Well, we have a compromised employee. It is a criminal resource. It is 2 credits to install, and it has the subtypes of connection and link. It has 1 recurring credit. Use this credit during traces. Gain 1 credit whenever the corp reses a piece of ice. And it is 1 influence. Okay, Aaron. I hear corpse res ice like kind of often.
Every once
Um
in a while.
and but I hear traces are garbage. So how do we feel about compromised employee? It's doing 2 very different things that don't seem particularly related. But is there some hidden synergy here?
Yeah. So this is kind of. I have 2 comments to make. One, this feels like they did the "How do we make this card better" segment, like themselves after they made this thing, and then secondly, uh, what if there was a link card, but it didn't even actually give you links, so it didn't even benefit you in the ways that other link cards do, of like at least enabling link related shit.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah, because it said it's connection and it's link, but it does not give you link. It does give you effective link that functions the same way.
Yep.
But it is not link, so it will not turn on underworld contacts, which I would like to point out that when we were talking about the helpful AI, we were incorrectly referring to underworld contact as compromised employee.
Oh, how dare we?
Which I think is the most fame that this card ever got, was getting confused for what was
better?
Yeah, I was getting confused for a different card. But yeah, it's weird, right? That, like I said, it's like they did our, well, how would we make this card better? Oh, well, I guess have it do this section. But they did that themselves because they realized that, oh yeah, this actually just kind of sucks.
Because there are a bunch of weirdos. That's what. Yeah, this card always confused me. I don't know who thought Link was too strong, but
I don't know who thought Link.
Fair, fair.
But so and then the problem though, right, is that compromised employee should really honestly this card should cost like 0 credits. Because here's the thing: is that like you gain one credits whenever the corp reses a piece of ice. Pretty good, right?
Yep.
But when you really get down to the nitty gritty, across an entire game, how many pieces of ice are probably going to get resed?
Not that many on the whole, probably.
Like if you're thinking like if a game gets deep, right? You know, like
Yeah.
you know talking about like a 6-6 barn burner. Like what 7, 8
Yeah.
pieces of ice might get resed. So that
It's
means
not that
that
much. And there's the timing issue, right? Because
yeah,
this has to go down before the ice gets rezzed, which means you're sitting on your hands trying to get these out instead of making runs, which, as we have established, is what wins you the game.
yeah. And so, that's a really good point. So, you might not even see 8 credits out of this if 8 ice get played because, or get rezzed rather, because chances are that, you will throw this down after 1 or 2 have already gotten rezzed in the early game.
Yeah.
Or you just might not draw it soon enough,
I don't know. Maybe, all right. Can we skip to the how we would make this better thing?
Yeah.
Because I got
Spoilers,
an idea
yeah,
already.
yeah. Spoilers, nobody ever played this, nobody ever saw this, this card sucks. So I guess
Yeah,
just to get that out of the way.
peak binder fodder. All right. Instead of one recurring credit to use during traces, have it keep the 1 credit when the corp reses a piece of ice, but say when you install this, place 1 credit on it for every resed piece of ice. Use these credits during runs.
That would be pretty good. That'd be pretty strong.
There's something there, right? It does a thing, and it's not just a sunk cost if it shows up later.
Yeah. I think that might be one that you might need to tweak some of the numbers a little bit though, because depending on how much ice is res, like if you throw this down, and you just get like 5 credits, to be able to use during runs, like
Right.
I don't know. If you keep the 2 costs though, even that though, right? You're getting 3, so that's like even that's not crazy, I guess.
Yeah.
I like where your head's at. I personally, as a counterpoint, don't know what I would do. But I do like that idea.
It's not the simplest one to try to fix.
Yeah. I do think I agree with you though that get rid of the link, but haha, not really. Like bullshit. Like that sucks. It should definitely just do something totally different. The gain 1 credit whenever a corp reses a piece of ice, I do think is fine and interesting.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that we really ever saw our other cards that did that very often.
No.
And I don't know, maybe that's just because, compromised and play flopped so hard, they were like, never again.
No, yeah. You know the other funny thing? This has the link subtype, and it doesn't even give you real link.
Oh yeah, I think I pointed that out earlier. Like,
oh, I did. I'm a retard.
It says link, but it doesn't do that.
It's a lie.
So it can get destroyed by Foxfire. Another L. Compromised employee cannot stop taking L's.
It's nothing but losses all the way down.
I like where your head's at though. Keep the gain credit and then just make it do something else. Just make it give you something else. Flavortown.
Flavortown. This doesn't have any, and the art, while it's not bad in concept, it's kind of hard to look at.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's fine.
Mostly negative space, which isn't
Yeah.
the worst, but it's not eye catching.
Yeah, certainly not eye catching. I mean, I do kind of like what's going on in it. You like the the employee loosening his tie, and the person with their with their hand on the table. I mean, like I like what's being depicted.
Not bad.
Yeah, definitely not bad. But no function to flavor because it's like what are they like bribing him? I guess I don't know. I mean,
I think they're like showing him pictures of him making out with a Thai ladyboy or something, and he's real nervous about it because they're going to send it to his wife.
Yeah, and then at that point, what if she steals him?
Right, so, exactly.
So I mean, pretty rough stuff for our boy here. I give this card a 0.
Yeah, it's a 0. It's just binder fodder.
Yeah, there's cards that nobody ever really played, and then there's cards that nobody ever played, like at all.
I don't remember ever seeing it in play.
Yeah, never once. Like maybe if you just happen to play against like some poor guy who just bought the core set and it's like he just like had to put it in there. Bunch of garbage. This sucks. Throw it away. But yeah, that's our time. Do we have any closing thoughts, closing remarks?
Yeah, where are the good cards at?
Yeah, so far Trace Amounts not off to a stellar start with E3 feedback implants so far being the star of the show, which I find
It,
funny.
it is off to an uninspired start.
Yeah, I mean, it's got 2 6s in there, so they're not bad.
It's okay. Like there's some decent cards. I like E3, but I don't know. There's just some duds in here.
Yeah, let's get something wild. Let's hope the next 5 cards there's something just crazy. There's something nuts in the
I think
next
we
five
might be
cards.
disappointed.
Oh, shut up, and we'll find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.